Hey, what's up, Swits? I'm Old Salty Sean, aka Dalron Talvani, and today I wanted to sit and chat with you about the state of ESO's Overland content and dungeon difficulty. I've been hearing a lot of chatter from my favorite ESO content creators such as Artea and Nephis talking about the state of ESO's difficulty, and I felt I needed to share some of my personal experiences into that discussion. But the main inspiration behind this video was actually a series I've been binging lately from Josh Strife Hayes, mainly his Worst MMO Ever series. One video in particular, titled It Gets Better After 100 Hours, really struck a chord with me. If you haven't seen it before, I strongly advise giving it a watch, but the TLDR version is if you're having to tell new players that the game doesn't get good until they're 100 hours into it, it's not a good game. Now this really impacted me, because that's the kind of mentality I generally crucify people for in other games that I don't play, but I had noticed that I've been saying it to a bunch of my friends over the past couple of months. So let me give you some context on why I think I have a unique perspective to talk about this recent volatile topic. Fans of the channel will recognize these three familiar faces, three of my friends that I dragged back into the game after they initially quit. Over the course of my dungeon banter videos, we leveled them up, got them geared, and started taking on veteran hard mode dungeons. And I promise this whole video won't be me just plugging other content, this is the last time I swear, but if you haven't seen those, please give them a watch. They're my favorite content to make on the channel even if they don't get many views, and I do plan on making a lot more. Anyway, for pretty much everybody involved with those videos, that was their second time coming back to the game. Everyone in the Banter Dungeon group actually started around the same time, as well as a couple other players. Sims initially proposed the idea of getting in on the game while Morrowind was playable for free. You guys already know that I'm a huge Dunmer simp, so it didn't take much to convince me, and before long, our entire Discord was playing. But these guys like Elder Scrolls. I love Elder Scrolls. Now in no way is that me trying to do a one-upsmanship or saying that I'm a true fan and they're not. I actually mean this is a big negative. I was willing to ride out some pretty boring content just to see what might be on the other side of it, while one by one my friends were quitting because they were getting bored. Take for example my man Mitch here. Mitch is almost entirely motivated by challenging content when it comes to MMOs. My man here has spent more time in the RuneScape fight caves than I've spent writing erotic Dunmer fanfiction. And that's a lot of time. But just doing the quest content, he got so bored with it that he assumed the entire game was going to be that easy and just quit to play something else. And it wasn't until I told him how much fun I was having in Maelstrom that he even considered coming back to it. Now we're constantly running veteran hard mode DLC dungeons, my boy here is constantly crunching numbers, sending me TPS spreadsheets of what builds he can create to help us get 1% higher DPS. The issue is that Overland content is just too easy. You can defeat almost any enemy using only light attacks. Okay, so the plan was to have a joke here where I have a time lapse of this thing slowly killing me, but I think I'd actually run out of hard drive space before that would ever happen. So you see, there's never any real threat anywhere, whether it's questing or in delves. A world boss or a public dungeon might make a real threat if there's no players around, but both are pretty easy to solo for veterans. So my friends all quit because they got bored with it, and I stayed around, playing on and off for a couple years. It wasn't until I started up my channel and starting to do some of the real endgame content that my friends started to show interest again. I started grinding veteran DLC dungeons and streaming them in our Discord, and people saw real mechanics that you couldn't just ignore. Imagine that. People started showing interest in coming back to play through the content. We also tried running the occasional dungeon during our initial trial period, but man, if anything in this game needs readjusting, it's the base game dungeons. In most MMOs, the leveling period to max is meant to teach you how to play your character, giving you a couple skills every few levels so you don't feel overloaded while you learn how to play the class. That same mentality is supposed to transfer to dungeons as well. It's supposed to serve as an introduction on how to heal or how to tank, since you're not going to be getting that experience leveling out in the world. Well, in ESO, since the content is relevant forever, it's basically expected that if you want your daily dungeon quickly, you queue up for a random normal as a fake healer or a fake tank just to burn through the dungeon as fast as possible. While we were making the first dungeon banter video for the channel, at one point we got Fungal Grotto 1, and I point out that we needed to just start pulling things because I don't feel like waiting for the new tank. A lot of the content I edited out was my friend and I asking each other if we were the bad guys for helping perpetuate this experience, especially since this kind of behavior is the norm when it comes to running regular dungeons. This mentality is to the game's detriment, because at no point in these dungeons are players under any real threat, regardless of their loadout. I know some players hear that and say, hey great, it lets new players see the content. Well no, it's actually really bad. It instills awful habits in new players and teaches them almost nothing that they need to know for the late game. To go back to my personal story, after my friends quit and I kept playing, I was healing dungeons pretty regularly, and when I was high enough CP to start trying veterans, I went straight into a random dungeon finder pug, and we got Depths of Malatar. I thought I was all ready to go. Up until this point, nobody was ever in any real threat of dying. Throwing down grand healing and then regen spamming worked pretty well up until this point, so I thought it would work fine for veteran too. We got absolutely smacked, and I justifiably got flamed for it and the group disbanded. Now at this point, there's one or two paths players can take. You can either take the time to study up on the boss fights, learn the mechanics, read more about your own skills, and learn how to actually play the game, or say that really wasn't fun, I don't ever want to do that again. I chose the latter, and resigned myself to playing solo forever. I wanted to learn how to heal, but without a way to practice it in challenging content without upsetting a bunch of strangers, there was really no middle ground available to me. Now, of course, my friends have come back since then, and I've been regularly healing us through Veteran Hard Mode DLCs, but I'm very aware of how lucky I am and that a lot of people don't have access to that kind of resource. ESO desperately needs middle ground difficulty between the brain dead easy and the do this mechanic or your whole group explodes difficulty. Without it, you'll never teach players to learn, and they'll just likely go through the entire game spamming one or two abilities and then wonder why they're struggling so much in the hard content and won't come back to it. The next hurdle is the actual time investment it takes to get to the fun part of the game. I mentioned before that the "it gets better after 100 hours" argument is a completely flawed one. Well, I've had to tell that over 100 times to my friend David. David doesn't really care about Elder Scrolls. He doesn't really care about MMOs in general. David mainly plays with us because we bully the shit out of him, and because he likes playing games with his friends. Now, David was one of the earliest ones to quit when we started playing the first time, meaning he had the farthest to go when he got back. David wants to run the hard content with us, but has zero motivation to play through the easy dungeon content just to get there. It's been a constant struggle of constantly twisting his arm to get him to at least do his daily dungeon with us for the big daily XP boost, just so that we can eventually run the fun stuff with him. And one of the biggest hurdles to that was telling him that he basically had to hit 2 different level caps. Most of you know that veteran DLC dungeons are locked behind a 300 CP wall before you can even queue up for them. So I basically had to tell him congrats on hitting level 50, now get to level 300, and then we can have fun. For those of you veteran players who have forgotten what this moment is like, I want to remind you that to a casual MMO enjoyer who's playing this game on a whim, these are all what Josh Strife Hayes would call a quit moment. A game I spent a lot of time with when I was younger was Guild Wars 1. That game's level cap is only 20. The goal with that game was to have players hit the power cap early so that skill would always win out and players could play with their friends right out of the gate. Why I bring this up is because ESO makes you grind and grind and grind boring, impossible to die in content until it thinks that you're ready to try the real game, but because you haven't been challenged to learn anything on that road, you likely aren't ready for real content. Some of you are already saying, well, what about base game veteran dungeons? You don't need 300 CP for those. Well, base game veteran dungeons are also brain dead easy to complete. Ironically, I actually think those need the least amount of difficulty adjustment. While I would like them to be somewhat harder, to help smooth out the curve between regular dungeons and veteran DLC dungeons, I do really like that there are monster sets that aren't that hard to get to help out starting players. But to my point, currently these are barely harder than their normal counterparts, meaning that they're not keeping anyone's attention and nobody's learning anything about how to play in them. All of this without even talking about how difficulty can affect your feelings for immersion. The Overland Quest content literally has you dueling with Daedric princes, actual gods who are as powerful as the beings who created the world we live in their prime, and we fight them with the aid of some NPCs or a lore MacGuffin and defeat them without any real effort from the player. But then when you go into a veteran DLC dungeon, and it's like one ghost who's a former carpenter is like, boo, you stepped in a red circle one time, your whole group is dead now. Like, damn man, friendship ended with Dagon, now Foreman Bradigan is my new god. Now I know there's a very heavy casual community in ESO, and for those who are disagreeing with me for the game to get harder, I hope you can understand what I'm calling for here. I'm asking for overland content and normal dungeons to be upgraded to challenging content, not difficult content. I'm not asking that we turn this game into Dark Souls. The content that's already hard feels pretty appropriately balanced. I'm not some elitist that thinks that the game needs to suddenly become anti-casual. I've always liked ESO's play your way philosophy. It's why we have such a wonderful diversity of content creators in the community. But I think the current difficulty in the game is detrimental to the longevity of the game. Again, of the 10 or so of us that started playing this game, I'm the only one who stuck it out to the end and had to really work to get the 4 others to come back to it. And I blame that entirely on the initial difficulty presented to my friends and just how long it took them to get to the point where they feel like they were getting challenged. I love this game. No other MMO has ever gripped me in the endgame the way ESO has. I love that the entire game is relevant forever, that there's so many ways to play it. I think build diversity in this game is unparalleled to any other MMO out there. But because I love this game, I want to hold it to a higher standard than other MMOs, not a lesser one. So I hope that you understand that my criticism is out of a place of affection, not negativity. I want ESO to be the absolute best game that it can be, with a community as large as we can make it. Anyway, this rant has gone on for way too long. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and please share with me your thoughts below. I'm fully aware that I'm only one person's experience, and it's always possible that I'm entirely wrong and everyone else feels a different way. So whether you agree or disagree with me, please let me know in the comments below. And I really hate doing this, but if you like the video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out as I'm trying to find an audience with this channel. And if you really want to help me out, consider watching another video after this one so I can get some of that sweet YouTube algorithm juice. But until we meet again on the plains of Vvardenfell, I'm Salty Sean, saying smoke skooma and worship Daedra.
Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming.